this weekend for a fun trip around Steeler Nation. We're going to talk some Pittsburgh Steelers players that need to step up this year. We're going to answer your questions. So get in the chat. Let's talk some Steelers tonight. And Shannon, we're working with a new system here. We're trying to get some things ready. So listeners, I apologize if there's any issues. We will get them straightened out. But Shannon, tell me how you're doing tonight. It's been a while since we've had you on the show.
Well, I've wanted to be on for the last few weeks, and it just something's come up each time, and so I was excited to be on tonight, and doing well, and hopefully you are as well. And just that dead part, the 5 weeks between mini camp and training camp, and you're kind of searching for content because you want to talk about the Steelers, but it seems like there's a lot of repetitive stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It does. I think that the part about this season or season of the year that always starts to, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but like you either start to just get way overexcited about the roster and the team that they're putting together and like start to think about all the ways that maybe if things go right, this could be a special year. That's how I am anyway. I know some people it's like, oh wait, now that we have to wait, here's all the things that have gone wrong too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
which angle of that are you, Shannon? Do you get maybe overly zealous as this part of the season goes on? Now that we know what the roster's more or less shaping up to be.
I'm a little unique in that I'm a realist,
Okay.
but I'm also a positive person. Like I'll say, I'll make the best of a bad situation, and I'm looking at everything going on this off season as I do every year. I wasn't necessarily wanting them to bring in Aaron Rodgers, but
Right.
they did, and now I'm looking at it from the positive. All the possibilities that what he could bring to this offense that they haven't had since Big Ben retired. And so I think that you have the glass half full, or the glass half empty people. I fall into glass half full, and I will always try to look at it uh, from a positive outlook because being negative about it isn't going to help anything. And
Right.
I think that if you kind of go into a situation with the right attitude and you put the right effort, you're going to get more positive results. So that's how I'm looking at this season. I do see possibilities that this could be a success, and we still have this time before the season starts that they might be another trade or another signing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still things that can happen, and I mean, Shannon, I think this sounds like you too, but this is always how I approach it. If you can't have fun
Mm-hmm.
rooting for a team, if it's all just oh I can't believe they haven't signed a wide receiver two yet, or Aaron Rodgers, he's over the hill, this isn't going to work, and what are they doing? If you can't have fun rooting for the team or following the team, then why are you even doing it? That's what sports are about. They're here for us to have fun, and that's what I want to do.
Oh, definitely. A lot of times I'm like, I, I wonder is these people enjoying their fandom?
Right.
I mean, because I love the Steelers, and I'll go back to the '70s as a fan, and that's the only team I've ever loved in any sport. I love sports in general, but the only team, I believe black and gold. So now some of these last few seasons have been tough, and I know they have been for you as well. To find a lot of the joy because we want to see them successful, and they keep doing the same thing over and over and over,
Yeah.
banging their head against the wall, and you just like to see somebody commit to a positive change.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. They're like as fans in the end, we have to just be satisfied with what they put together, or
Mm-hmm.
we have to watch what they've put together. That's the product that's going to go out on the field. So you might as well take a positive approach to it to a degree. And realism is a part of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one to tell people how to fan because you
No.
know do what you want to do you, but I do have my way, and that's how I kind of feel about it. So I think that like when we're talking about the expectations for the Steelers this year, because you have Aaron Rodgers, there's a bunch of different ways you can look at it, right? You can look at
Mm-hmm.
it like, okay, you've got a quarterback who is a former MVP. He is a guy who's kind of been there, done that. He's a Super Bowl champion, albeit way back in 2010. It's been a while for Aaron Rodgers. And we won't talk about that game. We don't need to talk about that game.
Please.
But then you have guys too. It's like, I don't expect anything out of him because he is 42 years old, and those days are behind him. And he's coming from a Jets tenure that was just a disaster from the start. And we've got a comment in here from Mark. It says, Mark Tobin, if Rodgers is here, the expectation is Super Bowl. You've got an MVP Super Bowl champ on the roster. Average season, not going to cut it. Is that how you feel about this, Shannon, or do you kind of take this more? Because to me, that's a little too, like, 5 years ago for Aaron Rodgers. That's not current Aaron Rodgers necessarily. Now, could he turn back the clock? We've seen it happen before with good quarterbacks on good teams, but is that how you're approaching it, though?
No, I don't think that signing Aaron Rodgers makes them a Super Bowl contender. I'd said that before. That's why I was like, I didn't know how much he was going to cost. That was one of the things I was most concerned about. And we had Mason Rudolph, and I'm like, well, but when I heard what his price was, 1 year deal, there's no risk really. And to me, the Steelers need Aaron Rodgers to be a game manager.
Yeah,
actually a step above. You remember when Kenny Pickett had the successful run at the end of the one season, and they had a good time of possession, and they, the defense was doing their thing, and they made the playoffs. And Mason Rudolph, his last few games, he made the big play when it was there, and he was an effective game manager, and that's what I think they need Rodgers to be. Now, if everything fell into place perfectly, we don't know what the top ceiling of this team is yet. So I think that he does make them a more realistic threat to do something they haven't done in quite a few years, is win a playoff game. But for me, Steelers' success is Super Bowl. And I think that they realize that their future, this is a 1 year contract.
Yeah.
Their future is they're really going to try to go all in next year, more than likely in the draft, to find a young guy, potential franchise guy. So based on what they had available and what it was going to cost, I like this route.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Rodgers and Rudolph and Howard can all play the same offense.
Yeah.
So it's not like you got one scrambler and you got one deep ball guy. You got, like last year, the Fields and Wilson cannot run the same offense. So if Rodgers still has what I think he has left in the tank, and they can be more aggressive on offense, I believe that we could see something, successful this year, maybe even a playoff win. Because we got to remember, Jeremy, magic does happen. Yeah. And why do we call it magic? It's because we're not expecting it.
Right.
And that if we have a lot of success this year, I would consider that a magical season.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned success for the Steelers in your eyes is Super Bowl, and I agree with that. But I also come at it from the perspective, and it helps me enjoy like the process a little bit more. I think success to me is being in that conversation, like the 2010s Roethlisberger led teams were. Every year you came into it with the expectation that your team was a contender to go represent the conference in the Super Bowl. And whether it went there or not, at least you were in that discussion. Right now, the Steelers sit in the discussion category of maybe playoff team. That's the discussion category that they're in. Are they a one and done unit again this year? Are they even going to make it? We probably know that they're going to win 9 games at least. They might win 10 or 11, but once it gets to the playoffs, can they do anything there? So I'm honestly, like, if I'm honest with myself and other fans, I'm tired of not being part of the championship conversation every year. I don't like being the nobody expects us to do anything, so let's surprise some people team. I want everybody looking at the Steelers and saying, this team is one of those teams. They're one of the 5 or 6 teams every year that you think if things go right for them and if they play to their best, they are a Super Bowl contender. And maybe they get there eventually. Maybe that is what Aaron Rodgers gets them to this year. We'll see. But that's kind of my take on what a successful season and a successful process is for the Steelers. Is have they done enough to put them in the conversation of Super Bowl and conference championship contenders year in and year out? So we'll see how. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was going to say, I totally agree with you. As I say quite often, for me, I want to see. We know it's a rebuilding process. Now, the Steelers do not want to commit to a rebuilding process as far as hitting rock bottom and starting over. And
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily have to do that. But I'm not concerned if it's 7 wins or if it's 10 wins. If I see a young nucleus growing, because we know that there's a process and there's a window, a short window. Like the Bengals had a really strong window, and then they got to start paying all these guys. And then it's hard to keep depth. It's hard to keep everybody happy. You got too many stars, you can't afford them all. And have depth across the board. Like the Eagles are in a prime position.
Yeah.
But the Eagles are there because they draft great.
Yep.
They evaluate their own talent great. They develop their own talent. And they're great at placing free agents that fit their scheme and what they want to do. I think the Ravens are better at that in the AFC than anybody else. Of course, the Chiefs have been strong, but they've been strong because of the top down. Great coach, great quarterback. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the Eagles show you can do it with a solid quarterback.
Yeah.
More than a game manager. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Hurts, but I'm saying you don't have to have the top 3 guy.
Yeah.
Because the Steelers had that forever with Ben and all the talent they had. But you got to have the balance. See, the Steelers had killer bees. They were top heavy, no defense. Then they had defense, but they didn't have no offense. So you got to have the balance, and that's what they're struggling to find right now. So for me, I would call success is seeing the development and a young nucleus that they're heading in that trajectory, the right trajectory. So I agree with you totally what you said.
John Malesko says, I don't like being we got the Steelers in the wild card round, so at least we make the second round of the playoffs team. Yeah. I agree with you, John. Let's get that out of here. Let's get back to being the team that says, oh, great, we got the 7th seed or 6th seed in the wild card. Let's go win. I want to big up Big G is in the comments. Welcome in, Big G. Thanks, Big G, Sean Gurley. Win the division, win a playoff game, win a championship. That's the formula. Can they get back to it? I guess we will see. Before we go to break, Shannon, since we don't have really any questions to answer in the comments, go ahead and get those in there, listeners, if you want us to answer your question about the team and the roster. Anything you've got Steelers related, we will talk about it here. But I did want to mention, or maybe go over the topic just a little bit of some linchpin players, some guys that we are relying on in 2025 that are filling significant roles, but it's not necessarily the elite guys on the roster, not the TJ Watts and Cam Haywards, and not even Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf. We know we need those guys to play really well, right? To have a good shot. Who are some of the next tier guys that are filling roles that we really, really need to step up for Pittsburgh in 2025 for them to be on the track towards competitiveness, or maybe it's a sophomore or maybe a third-year player that needs to come into their own, so the Steelers know that they've drafted well at that spot and they can move on to other positions. Who's maybe the first player that comes to mind for you, Shannon, when we talk about guys that are important that need to step up for 2025?
I kind of expected more from this young man last year, but I want to see Keanu Benton.
Yeah.
He immediately comes to mind because I do think he has more to give. I believe that, they drafted Harmon. I think Yahya Black will eventually be the starting nose. And he has some flexibility that he can slide outside too. But I've always thought that Keanu Benton was an outside guy, not a nose tackle. Now, he's trying to fill that role, and he's done an adequate job. but I think he can take his pass rush up another level
Yeah.
because I think he had way more pressures, but he didn't get many sacks. So you got to finish. He does. It also, if you look at his statistics, the beginning of the game and early in the third, he's more effective on his pass rush, and then I think he wears down. So that may be conditioning, and it may be because he's trying to play a little heavier to anchor for the nose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if he was able to slide out full time and play it at more ideal weight, but I think moving forward to get where they want to go, they need Keanu Benton to take that next step in his development.
I agree. He might be the first player that comes to mind for me as well because, um, the Steelers drafted Derek Harmon, and some people were saying, well, maybe they wouldn't have had to do that if Keanu Benton was a little better last year. I don't think so. I think that they were going defensive line kind of no matter what because this is about Cam Hayward and replacing him down the line, not necessarily putting somebody next to Cam Hayward that you really need to step up. I think Keanu Benton was fine last year, but he didn't take the leap that I guess I was hoping he would. Um, so he's definitely one of those guys for me. Afton Forehead in here put Deshaun Elliott, who the Steelers just added or gave an extension to for, I think it was $12 million, $12 million extension. It was a good deal for Pittsburgh. It was a good deal for Deshaun Elliott too. But I kind of like this one. I think that a lot of the pressure and a lot of the talk obviously is on Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary as a leader back there. But Deshaun Elliott was really good last year. Can he keep it up this year? I think that that's a fair question, and I think that it's a guy that the Steelers will be relying upon in that secondary.
He had one of the lowest missed tackle percentages in all, maybe the highest for a safety. So for me, Deshaun Elliott, keep doing what you're doing.
That's right.
You're doing great. We love you. The extension was brilliant. I'd like to see the Steelers do that more often. Before it's actually you have to, and you get in these negotiations and you got a guy that fit the scheme so well, fit the culture, just wrap him up. And they got him for a great price.
Yes.
I really do. And now here's another guy that needs to step up. Is I don't know if you call him a star anymore. I can't. Is Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Oh.
Because Minkah Fitzpatrick, I love Minkah. And he still does an excellent job as a run defender, but he's playing too much like a box linebacker or a box safety when we need him as the ball hawking part.
Yeah.
And Elliott can handle that other part. Now they got Thornhill. I think they've strengthened the safety position.
Yeah.
And if they do what we talked about it many times, if they could play more man press coverage, take more chances on defense in coverage, turn that pass rush loose, and then force quarterbacks to maybe not be able to identify where Minkah is, I think it might open up his game again.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's a lack of effort. I don't think it's a lack of conditioning. I don't think he's lost a step. I mean, the knee injury there he played through the year before last did affect him.
Yes.
But I think he'll be recovered this year. I just think he needs a better scheme in front of him to make him more effective back there.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. He does need to step up and be a little splashier. I mean, the Steelers defense relies on that. The front seven wreak havoc and the back end takes advantage of it. And if they're not taking advantage of it as consistently, then more big plays happen because you're playing a little bit boomer bust coverage back there. And, maybe that makes things more difficult for an offense that has struggled as well over the last few years. So I think speaking of the offensive side of the ball, Broderick Jones for me is the guy that I just really need to see have a good year. If I had to pick a linchpin player, like I don't know, you're familiar with Dave Damashek probably. He's done a lot of. Well, he's a Steelers fan, but he's kind of been a national media guy for a long time. He does his own stuff now, but he always called it the Jenga pieces, and got players that if you take them out of the lineup or they don't play well or they're hurt or something like that, that kind of everything falls apart. If Broderick Jones doesn't play well this year, I think that side of the offensive line is going to struggle, and it's going to be a problem because Isaac Seumalo wasn't as dynamic last year. He was still pretty solid. I think he'll be pretty solid again this year, but I think he really needs, some dynamic talent on either side of him. I think Zach Frazier is going to bring that. His floor is pretty high, and I think his ceiling is pretty high as well. That's your boy, Shannon. But Broderick Jones has to be able to take the next step as well. We need some Broderick Jones to play really, really well this year in order for this offense to hit its stride. So if I had to pick one guy that I think the season rides on more than anybody else, it's Broderick Jones. And maybe you just include that whole front five, but Broderick Jones is the big player, the big name in that I need to step up.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. I don't. There's something that's not talked about as often as I believe it should be with Broderick Jones is that a lot of times he would take the play off, and what I mean is he would come off the block, and then he would stand there, and and I understood that, maybe it was on an outside zone run, and Harris wasn't getting out there, but keep going. If you watch Frazier, you watch McCormick, these guys block to the whistle. Sometimes a little past the whistle. And I'm okay with that. You'd see Jones standing around too much.
Yeah.
For me, attitude and effort. If you give me the right attitude and you give me the right effort, I can make you a player. But you can have less talent. But if you have those two things and you give me a guy with a bad attitude and a bad effort, I'll take the guy with less talent who will give me those things. And I think Broderick Jones was frustrated. I think it was a mental thing, which we see out of Georgia guys. George Pickens, anyone?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think Broderick Jones give up on some plays. I really do. And I want to see the dog in him this year. I want to see him pancaking guys, driving guys. The encouraging thing for me, and I'm sure you've seen it too, they said before Fautanu's injury last year that the Steelers considered him their best lineman.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much truth is in that. I didn't even see who said it. But that's a great thing to hear, that he looked that good. Because I know coming out, he had some of the sweetest feet of any lineman in the draft last year.
Yeah.
And I expect him to do a great job on the right side. So as you say, it's really going to be up to what Broderick Jones can do on the left.
Yep, I agree. And I think that, the Omar Khan needs this because that was his first round pick. I mean,
traded up,
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers needs this. He needs some good Broderick Jones play. That running game needs it. So I think a lot rides there. And I don't want to just assume that Troy Fautanu is going to be great, but I do feel pretty good about that. I really do. And, if he can stay healthy, I think that this front five by the end of the year is going to be really, really good. And even if McCormick is starting at right guard, even if Broderick Jones is Dan Moore adjacent as far as a good, not great player, by the end of the year, I think that that's enough for this offensive line to be just fine with the trajectory of being really good next year when they get the rookie quarterback in place. And I think that that's where you want to be. So
if Broderick Jones is anywhere near Dan Moore as far as production or performance, I'll consider that a great miss as a first round pick. Yeah. I think that we were just so desperate to have anybody out there at left tackle that was halfway competent. If you look, Dan Moore led the league in sacks given up. He had penalties. He had, nothing against Dan Moore, and I wish him well. But I'm so glad he's gone. I think Broderick Jones, we're going to see a much better performance at left tackle, and much better than anything we've seen there since Villanueva. I'll be honest. Yeah. Okay. I really expect that. Anything less, I'll be honest, I'll be disappointed.
Okay. I think, just for me, Dan Moore was pleasantly surprising as a above replacement player last year. Now, you had to go with Broderick Jones at this point because he's got the higher upside.
Mhm.
And he's the guy that you spent a first round pick on. You didn't do that with Dan Moore Jr. That's a fourth round pick plan. And then you were like, oh, the comp pick we can get out of this guy with the tackle market the way it is, we're definitely letting him go. So I guess I would take like Dan Moore Jr. production out of Broderick Jones with it trending towards much better, I guess is what I would say. But not like that's the ceiling we're getting out of him.
Yeah,
That would be disappointing. Yeah.
as you say, the trending
Yeah.
in the right direction. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I ain't expecting him to come out and be all pro next year. I just expect that trajectory, as you say, and I think by the end of the year we should see a much higher caliber player than Dan Moore. Athletically, I just think that they're not even comparable. Broderick Jones has it all. It's kind of like when they went from Kendrick Green to Mason Cole. I mean, Mason Cole, at first I thought, man, this guy's like Mike Webster because I got used to watching Kendrick Green suck so bad.
Yeah.
And so it made Cole look better than he actually was. and I'm hoping that's what I'm going to think this year of Broderick Jones because it ain't Dan Moore. And I'm going to be like, oh, he's great.
Good deal. All right, let's go ahead and take our break. And obviously, if you're listening live, we're just gonna pause for a minute here. But if you're listening on audio, next time check out the live show so you don't miss anything and don't have to listen to an ad break. But we will be right back after your short ad break here on the Steelers Q&A. All right, welcome back to the Steelers Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts and Shannon White chatting some Pittsburgh Steelers, and I can't find the comment from Claude, but everybody in the chat was talking about it, and I guess he mentioned, would you trade T.J. Watt? Shannon, would you trade T.J. Watt this offseason?
Well, before I answer that, I cannot see the comments.
Oh, okay.
I see nothing. I see how many people we got watching, but I have no comments, so I don't know where they're at.
Okay, do you have the chat open?
I have the chat open. Yeah.
Click on live stream chat if you can. Does it give you that option to see the live stream chat? Oh, maybe it's just for the host only. I'm sorry.
If that might be it because I cannot find it. But
we'll figure it out.
It's new. It's new. We're getting the bugs out. But I've kind of been open about it. It really depends, Jeremy. I don't want. I mean, just because you have the money to offer him, he wants a little more than Garrett. I mean, I don't want to disrespect everything that TJ has given the Steelers. I think he's a better player, but in my opinion, Garrett has never won anything either. Not even filling a stat sheet in a playoffs, disappearing. I understand teams focus on him and taking him away, but they've done that to all the greats through the years for the Steelers, and they found a way to make an impact. They were so dominant, they let other guys make the plays, because they were so focused on double and or triple team. And towards the end, Joe Green, they tripled him.
Yep.
But he had other guys that was able to make the plays, and part of it is because T.J. Watt hasn't had a strong enough cast around him to take advantage of all the attention that went to him. But long story short, what matters to TJ? Does he want to win a Super Bowl? It might not happen in Pittsburgh. They got to find their franchise quarterback. They got to, continue to strengthen the roster. I don't want to see him not get that opportunity, but I also don't want to overpay a guy who I'm afraid, because of his playing style and his age and his genetics, he is like JJ. And we see JJ could not stay healthy after 30.
Yep.
And so it's a tough call. I mean, I'm glad I'm not Omar Khan and the Steelers having to make this decision. Because everybody's like, well, there's plenty of money there. You can pay him. The right contract, like they did Cam Hayward. I was concerned last year with Cam Hayward, but they was able to sign him, and to a very team friendly deal, and both parties were happy, and the Steelers didn't. They did right by one of their best players, and I'd like to see something happen with TJ. I just don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the answer is if you want to win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, which I think Mike Tomlin does because that's when his contract ends,
Mm-hmm.
then TJ Watt is probably on. You want him to be on the team to have your best shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you'd have to you'd either have to win it this year in like a throwback Aaron Rodgers season, or it's probably happening in 2027 after your rookie quarterback has, like, your rookie quarterback lights it up like Roethlisberger did in 2004, probably even more so because you need better quarterback play these days than you even did back then, especially with the team the Steelers had around Ben. And you win one in the sophomore year of your quarterback. You take it way back to 0405 and handle it that way. And either way, I think TJ Watt being on this team gives you your best chance. So the cap's going to keep going up, Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback is going to be making even less next year on a rookie contract. Pay him. I just say pay him. I think pony up 41 million a year for the next 3 years or something like that, and pay him and see if you can go win a Super Bowl either this year or in 2 years when your sophomore stud quarterback is coming in and you're on a rookie contract and you can really fill out the rest of the roster really well as well. That's just my take.
I think there's an argument to be made either way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've heard both sides, and I really can't argue with either. I do not know what the answer is.
Yeah. I guess if that's the case, it's one of those things where whatever happens, we take it in stride and we try to see the positives out of it. Because if you do trade him, the assets you bring back are going to be significant, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be multiple picks, and one of those is probably going to be a first. And that helps you out. It really does. And it's going to come from a contender type team that's trying to get over the hump. I don't know what that team would be necessarily. Is that San Francisco? If they're rookie playing opposite the Bosa kid doesn't work out this year, and you need somebody to get there, are the Steelers willing to trade him in the AFC? I don't know. All the contenders on the AFC side are fairly decent rivals with the Steelers. It's the Ravens. Maybe not rivals, but the Chiefs, I don't like the Chiefs. Maybe that's why I consider them rivals. But the Ravens are up there. The Bills, I don't like the Bills either when you have to play the Bills. So I don't want to send him to any one of those teams, right? So it'd have to be like an NFC team. Maybe it's the Vikings or something like that. I don't know. So the partner would have to be right. And I don't think you're getting a top 10 pick in next year's draft
No, I don't
for him because it's going to be a contender that's going to go after him. So when I weigh all that in there, I guess I think just pay him and see if you can win one with him. And if you can't, then at least you say you tried, and at least you kept one of the best players in franchise history around and made him a one helmet guy. So that's my take on it. But I can see the argument either way. And if you get the right trade value back, it does make sense to maybe swap TJ Watt for that franchise quarterback and then see if you can build more on defense there.
Yeah, again, I see. I could rationalize any of these options. I would like to have, the thing is, anybody you bring in, are they going to be the culture fit for the Steelers and the scheme fit like we know TJ is? And because there's guys out there that are can be a good pass rusher, but they won't have the all around game that TJ has. Yeah. They won't, in a perfect world, the Steelers could work out something that will be beneficial to both parties, and then have some flexibility year 2, 3 of the contract.
Yeah,
and because that could be by that point TJ might be like, well, I'll do a restructure or whatever. I know the Steelers are trying not to do that so much now, like they used to under Colbert, but do something where we'll free up some money. because the Steelers are going to be going all in. I think on this rebuild within the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been they've been competitive. That's one of Big G's big talking points. They've been competitive during this rebuild, which most teams can't do, right? And so it's a very unique circumstance. It's like there's so many ways you can take it. Like, do you blame Tomlin and say, you're underachieving because we need to win playoff games and we need to win Super Bowls. That's the standard in Pittsburgh. Or is he overachieving because he's had worse than 25th quarterback in the league play at the position for like 6 straight years now? Do you praise him for the non-losing seasons because it's just incredible that he can coax so much out of a roster that doesn't have high-end offense? Or do you say, well, maybe if one of those seasons we didn't do that, maybe we'd have our quarterback already? So I see both sides to the argument, but one thing you can't say about the Pittsburgh Steelers is that they don't try to put together a winning roster every year. They do. They try their darndest to put together a roster that's going to compete. And even if they can't afford it, or the players just aren't available, or even if they make the wrong move, that has happened sometimes. I'm not going to totally make them blameless in this and make it all circumstantial. The fact that they stay close enough to that line throughout a rebuild where they don't have anything at quarterback is pretty impressive to me.
The what frustrates me is whether it's a 6-11 season or an 11-6 season. If it is the same and you don't win a playoff game, and so really it's the same. The record didn't matter. If you don't win a playoff game, you might, you're just picking later in that every round in the draft. What has to happen is they have to start developing something schematically, player development, and they got to start that trajectory that we're talking about to where it's a slow climb, and you see it, and you're going into that next year, and you're like, hey, they're getting ready to take off. They added a few pieces, free agents. See, with the salary cap in the NFL, everybody's got basically the same money. It's what do you do with it? Everybody's they're drafting the same players.
Yeah.
And how do you develop that? What kind of scheme do you have to give you an advantage? Because everybody's got talent in the NFL. So the fact that the Steelers have struggled schematically with their coaching staff, they've struggled to find a replacement at quarterback. But it is the hardest thing to do is find a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
So I think the Steelers have a plan. Now, will it work going into next year's draft? Who knows?
Yeah.
But hey, they're accumulating draft capital. Looking towards everybody knows what's on the horizon. I don't think that gives the Steelers an advantage or a disadvantage, but we know what the plan is. But I'm just really concerned about their trajectory because right now the trajectory is a merry-go-round.
Yeah,
and they cannot get off of it because the argument's always they're still competitive. But see, what are you competing for? If you want to say they're 500 or better, then yeah, they're competitive. I don't call that competitive. To me, competitive is we are in a trajectory going towards being a contender again, and the Steelers have not been a true contender since 2018.
Yeah, development is part of it. And if I've had one major gripe, it's that I don't think that, I think Tomlin gets a good floor out of his players, but I don't know if he taps into their potential all the time. Either whether that's putting them in the right, and maybe it's not just him, right? But he does oversee it all.
Yeah, it's the coaching staff.
Yeah,
it's the Rooneys. They play everything close to the vest.
Yeah,
and we know that there's a certain amount of risk to get great reward.
Yeah, and you have to put players in a position to succeed as well.
Exactly.
And I think moving all these offensive linemen out of position and not being willing to move TJ around. And I know some of that was on him, but some of that was on the coaching staff too. They have a way that they play football and they don't change things up a lot. Mike Tomlin's been running a lot of the same stuff for 25 years now. So, you know, and some of it because it works. I mean, it just is good, solid defensive schematics. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you've had too many situations where an offensive lineman has been underperforming for you, and you send them somewhere else, and they're good there.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, but like the safety room, moving Minka around too much when he was in a good spot, and then yeah, for lack of a good box safety, you kind of had to move him up, and because the linebackers were so bad for a couple of years there, kind of have to move him up into the box because he was your best tackler. But and then after moving him back and forth between some of those things has not worked out. So I do think that there's a little bit of onus on the coaching staff to have gotten or to put these guys in better position to reach their potential, not just coaching them up to a solid floor and then leaving it there. So they have to be a little bit better about that.
Yeah, and I think that it's like, I understand when I'm criticizing, um, I'm not being hypocritical. I am a creature of habit. I don't know if you are, but I do not like change.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a creature of habit. I have a tendency to do repetitive things. You know, I know what I like, and and I don't blame Tomlin for being that way. You know, he's like, it's always worked for me, and I'm comfortable with this, and this is what I know. And I could see it me doing the same thing, or any of us. You know, it's just a human nature. But I think that after a little bit of time, I eventually figure out, okay, this ain't working, and I need to take some advice and figure out, you know, maybe there's a better way of doing this.
Yeah.
And that falls in on the Rooneys as well. They need to say, hey, let's all sit and let's have a talk. I mean, we seen when they went from Colbert, they went to Kahn and to Waddle, they went to a more modern thinking, modern team building, modern roster development,
Yeah.
and the way they approach the draft and free agency. Because used to, you know, the off seasons being a Steeler fan was so boring.
Yeah.
Because you just
Yeah.
wonder, are they going to be able to re-sign their free agents? But you didn't.
Right.
You might have one new guy. You know, now we don't know what's going to happen between now and training camp. There could be some more action.
Yeah.
But I just think that they need to. Tomlin needs to be more willing to leave his comfort zone, which I'm not judging him because we're all the same.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying. But sometimes we need to leave our comfort zone.
That is true. He always talks about not getting comfortable, but I think sometimes he likes to be comfortable.
He's pretty comfortable. He's pretty comfortable.
Just like the whole "we don't live in our fears" thing. I think sometimes he lives in his fears.
Little bit.
Sometimes I wonder because Kevin Colbert basically he crossed eras as a GM. Like,
yes,
you know, in the early 2000s and whatever, you could kind of win by keeping the guys that you had last year and just being better, you know, or coaching them up a little bit or whatever. I sometimes wonder though, like if Omar Khan had been the GM in the 2010s, like 2015, like during the Killer Bees era, would the Steelers have won a Super Bowl in that range? Because they would have been a little bit more aggressive in the offseason and added a few more players. I don't know.
I think so.
Maybe they would have.
I wholeheartedly believe. I mean, there was times that I remember conversations that we would have about, man, if they was the guy out there that could have been, you know, and if they would have just give up a little future draft capital, they clutched them draft capital like an old lady clutching her pearls.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, oh God, we can't, you know, we'll need them draft picks. But you can't, as Big G says all the time, you can't worry about the future because nobody knows. You know, you got to live in the present, and you got to look at it as we got the Killer Bees. We got one of the best offenses in all of football. And if they would have added one or two defensive guys, 2015, 2016, 2017, I think they would have won. I think they could have competed with New England, and I think they could have won Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But they just wouldn't pull the trigger. And and how many times do we hear, well, you got to have a willing trade partner. We wanted to trade. Nobody was willing to trade. Well, the problem is, how long have we heard that the Steelers are always trying to get something for nothing? They're low balling teams. We're hearing that right now.
Yeah.
That Con and M's like, we're inquiring, but we don't. Here's our offer, and it's not realistic.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I look at what the Rams did when they got Stafford, and they got Jalen Ramsey that year, and they went all in behind Aaron Donald, and they won the Super Bowl. The Steelers would have never done that.
Yeah. You're
because the Rams knew that it's all in. If they don't win it, we're not going to win anything for 2 or 3 years minimum. But they were all in. That's a ballsy way of approaching it.
Yeah.
But if the Steelers didn't have to be, Colbert did not have to be that riverboat gambler. Yeah, he just needed to add a guy or two, and I think they could have won it. But man, it was such. Again, what I said earlier, they've not had balance between the offense and defense for a long time.
Yeah, and like I go back to those years, and I think, Colbert he did a pretty good job of like adding depth pieces through free agency and things like that. Like D'Angelo Williams, great depth piece behind Le'Veon Bell, and the wide receivers were always pretty good, even if AB was hurt. But I mean, he obviously was the catalyst there. But they never did anything through free agency for starter positions under Colbert. It was always we drafted a guy 2 years ago, and now we expect him to step up into that role. And if it doesn't work out, you just sink that ship with the player. I mean, that was all it was. There was no backup plan, and so and
then he drafted poorly.
Yeah, and then he started drafting poorly, and it fell apart.
He used to be so good at it, and then he lost it. And the Steelers, it's impossible to recover unless you get very fortunate on your undrafted free agents and in free agency, whereas the Steelers didn't even like to utilize free agency. So the poor drafts for a team that relied on drafting well, it just put them in a huge hole that they're just now digging out.
Especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yes,
the defense was, All right. Hey, good stuff. Shannon, any final thoughts you want to throw out there before we close this one out for today?
No, it was a fun show. I appreciate you having me on, and I always love doing the Q&A. And I just think that, we've got a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to this year. Because I see, things have to go right, but you can say that about anything. Injuries, that levels the playing field. The top teams can be brought down to earth with a major injury. And so I just think that we have a lot to look forward to, and hopefully we have an uneventful next 5 weeks. No arrest or no anything real bad. And I know we're all excited for that training camp.
Yep. No boating accidents or anything crazy on vacation. No arrests. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe some excitement in the form of a couple more signings or something like that.
Or a trade.
Yeah, or trade. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I agree with you. Kind of lay low this summer, and maybe a contract gets signed for TJ. Maybe he's on the move, or a trade or a contract. We'll see what goes down. But we got a lot of time. We'll have more content for you every week here on the Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports. And Shannon, anything you got coming up that you want to plug here as well?
Well, tomorrow night, don't forget Steelers Hangover.
That's right.
Me and my brother Daniel J. And looking forward to seeing everybody there.
Good stuff. Tune in, as you always do. Bring your friends, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Steelers Q&A.